US President Donald Trump is doubling down on his proposal for the US to take over Gaza, despite widespread condemnation and outrage across the international community. But before we take a look at the backlash and the US government's response, let's quickly recap what was actually said when it was first announced.
The US will take over the Gaza Strip, will own it, and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site.
The US president also said he would like to see all Palestinians moved out of Gaza, with an area to resettle Palestinians permanently.
I think all of them, I think they'll be resettled in areas where they can live a beautiful life. If we can get a beautiful area to resettle people permanently in nice homes.
The president framed this as a humanitarian move, claiming Palestinians don't actually want to live in Gaza.
And the only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative.
He said it's too dangerous for people to stay in Gaza while it's being rebuilt, and suggested Palestinians be resettled in neighbouring Egypt and Jordan, despite both states repeatedly rejecting this idea. The president says he ultimately wants to flatten the Gaza Strip and have Americans, and not Palestinians, rebuild it into a Riviera of the Middle East. And when asked who would live in this rebuilt Gaza,
representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there.
Another thing President Trump said in the meeting was that everybody he's spoken to loves his idea. And while there has been some support for it, particularly in Israel,
this is the first good idea that I've heard.
The international backlash came pretty much immediately.
It's unlawful.
Bullshit. Gaza is not a bargaining chip.
France is fully opposed to population displacements.
There must be no forced displacement of Palestinians.
Palestinians are the ones who should take care of Gaza.
Let's start with the backlash to the first major proposal, the US taking over. Gaza needing outside help to rebuild isn't controversial, but the idea of a state taking ownership of a territory that doesn't belong to it is.
I do see a long-term ownership.
The Gaza Strip, like the West Bank, is part of the occupied Palestinian territories that's been under Israeli military control since 1967. Even though Israeli forces and settlers withdrew from Gaza in 2005, Israel is still considered an occupying force under international law because it effectively controls Gaza's borders, airspace, and coastline.
But that doesn't give them the right to give away the land or to sell the land.
Even though countries like the US, Israel, and Australia don't recognise Palestine as an independent state, the vast majority of the international community does. And according to experts, the US coming in and deciding that it owns Gaza without the consultation of the Palestinian people would be in violation of international law.
Any use of military force to acquire new territory by not respecting borders is a fundamental breach of Article 2.4 of the United Nations Charter. That would be interpreted as being an annexation of territory, such as Russia's annexation of part of Ukraine.
As for the second proposal, the relocation of Palestinians, Palestinians have been quick to reject claims by the US president that they want to leave Gaza.
This is our land. We will not get out of it.
Although it's demolished, our homes are worth the whole world for us.
We will not leave forever.
If Palestinians don't want to leave Gaza, no one can force them to without breaking international law.
It's a crime against humanity, the forcible displacement of a population from one area to another.
This could possibly be seen as an act of genocide with respect to the forced removal, certainly of children, because that's directly referenced in the Genocide Convention. These are some of the most significant mass atrocity crimes that modern international law recognises.
Leaders from around the world were quick to reject the president's proposals, with many making it clear that they won't support any kind of action that results in Palestinians being forced from the region. Even the US's close allies, like the UK and Australia, made a point to underline their support for a two-state solution, which involves the creation of a Palestinian state alongside the state of Israel.
They must be allowed to rebuild, and we should be with them in that rebuild on the way to a two-state solution.
So, what comes next? After such a strong international reaction, members of the president's team seemingly began to walk back parts of the proposal. For example, saying the president only wants to temporarily, not permanently, relocate Palestinians. But President Trump himself has seemingly doubled down on the idea of Gaza being turned over to the US after Palestinians have been resettled. Like the president's other recent claims about taking over Canada, Greenland, or Panama, some argue we should take this proposal with a grain of salt, because throwing out outlandish statements is part of the way he operates.
I think he's just trying to shake things up like he often does. He's trying to seize the spotlight with provocative statements.
But even if the president is just making provocative statements that he doesn't intend to follow through, the fact of the matter is he's still one of the most powerful people in the world. People listen to what he says, and his words have consequences.
Even if the US would be backtracking, the risk is that this would send a message that great powers, that states do not need to take international law very seriously.
It's a lot harder for the US to condemn a country like Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, or position itself as some kind of moral authority, if its own leader is talking about taking over other countries, or making offhanded remarks about violating international law. In the meantime, Israel's defense minister has told the military to prepare plans to allow for the voluntary departure of Palestinians from Gaza. And the world will be watching closely to see just how serious the US actually is about its proposal for Gaza.